You've already identified your eligible donor and briefly talked about the stem cell process. Now is the time to explain in greater detail about the stem cell donation process if they are found to be a match. This is arguably the most important part of the entire stem cell drive. Educated donors make better donors. Imagine a situation where a patient is waiting for a match on the OneMatch database and is unable to find one. Suddenly, he is able to find a match from a donor recruited at your drive. Now suppose that donor signed up without having much of an idea of the donation process. When he gets the call from Canadian Blood Services, he may not remember what it was he signed up for and is more likely to refuse and not agree to donate his stem cells. On the other hand, an educated donor is more likely to remember the process when he gets the call from Canadian Blood Services. Although both of these donors have the right to withdraw, the educated donor is much less likely to do so. Here are the most important points to discuss during the informed consent stage. 1. The two ways that stem cells can be donated, namely from the blood or from the bone marrow. 2. Possible risks and side effects of each process. 3. Patient and volunteer anonymity. And 4. The donor's right to withdraw at any time. Also, all registrants must be offered a copy of the OneMatch information pamphlet for new registrants.
Great. So thank you so much for your interest in stem cell donation. My role here is to make sure that you're fully informed about the whole donation process, so that if you're called and that you're found to be a match, you know really well what lies ahead. Now, I understand my colleagues told you about the two different methods of stem cell donation.
Yeah, someone said that I'd either get a needle in my arm or a needle in my hip.
Yes, exactly, that's right. And so I'm going to go through those donation processes in a bit more detail. And we've got some great diagrams which actually show that for you visually here. So this is the diagram that we have showing what it's like to donate stem cells from the bloodstream. And actually before this happens, you'd come in about a week before and you get a couple of injections of a growth factor. And that growth factor moves your stem cells from your bone marrow into your bloodstream to make it easier to collect them. So you do that before the procedure. And then on the day of the procedure, you become the donor in the diagram here. So you come in and you're sitting in the chair and blood is collected from one arm. It's filtered through this fancy filtering machine over here, and it's separated into the different components, so blood and stem cells in particular. And the blood part actually goes back into your other arm, because we're not collecting blood, we're only collecting that bag of stem cells, which then at the end of this process goes on and helps that patient in need. And so you're sitting with your blood going through this circuit or cycle for about 4 to 6 hours. And meanwhile, you're texting your friends or reading a book, watching a movie, anything really. And then after about 6 hours, when we've collected enough stem cells from that bag, then you're disconnected and you go home. And then those stem cells go and help that patient. Now, that's the way that stem cell donation happens the majority of the time. But we also tell patients that it's possible you may be asked, in rarer circumstances, to donate stem cells from the bone marrow. And in this process, the donor is put to sleep under general anesthetic, and bone marrow is obtained from the side of the hip using a needle. As I said, this happens a lot less commonly, but really important that we tell donors about both options. Now, with anything in life, there's risk. Driving a car has risk, any medical procedure has risk, and stem cell donation and bone marrow donation both have risks too. It's important that we talk about those risks so that you know what lies ahead and you know what to be aware of that can happen with this procedure. With stem cell donation from the blood, the major risk is from the growth factor. So the way I like to explain it is that that growth factor sort of tricks your body into thinking that you're sick. And by doing so, it allows the stem cells to move from the bone marrow into the bloodstream. So when I say that it tricks your body into thinking that you're sick, what happens is that people who get that growth factor feel sort of aches and pains, they feel flu-like symptoms, fatigue, nausea. Those are all temporary and they're gone within a week. There's data showing that the growth factor is very safe sort of long-term, with studies going up to 10 years showing that there's no long-term effects of the growth factor. Now, with bone marrow donation, you're put to sleep during the procedure, and whenever you're put to sleep under general anesthetic, there's a risk of like a reaction to the anesthetic. It's very rare. And as well, you don't feel anything during the procedure, but after the procedure, the pain in the hip is comparable to having fallen on ice. And that lasts a couple days, and most donors are back to their baseline within a month. There are two other things that I'd like to tell you about to make sure that you're fully informed about the process. The first is that you won't know who it is that you're donating to, and so the donor and the recipient are anonymous to each other. That is, if both you and the patient agree, you can exchange contact information 1 year after the donation, but only if both people agree. And so if either you or the patient doesn't want that to happen, you may never know who you're donating to, and it's important that you know that. The second thing that's important to tell you is that people are, registrants are able to withdraw at any time. So you could sign up now and then change your mind and you could withdraw, or if you're called that you're found to be a match to a patient in need, you could withdraw at that point too, right? There's absolutely no obligation to go ahead with the process, and you can always back out at any time. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I don't think I have any questions at the moment.
Great. So I'm going to give you this pamphlet, which covers in writing all the information that we talked about. And definitely let me know if you do have any questions. Happy to answer.
Great, thanks so much.
Great, thanks.
Often donors will have questions that aren't covered in the traditional explanation. We've included a number of the more common questions that donors tend to ask in the frequently asked questions section located on our website. Even after answering all of the questions, some donors still may not feel ready to register. That is okay. Hand them a one-match stem cell donation pamphlet and encourage them to be in touch in the future if they decide to donate at that time.